Hey guys, we're gonna do a quick film study on Billy Joe Saunders versus Gary O'Sullivan. And this was recommended to me after I posted my video about my predicting against Billy Joe Saunders. So far and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit before we get into the film study. I haven't watched the fight yet, so it's going to be all new for me. We'll be analyzing it at the same time, and kind of the things we're going to be looking for Billy Joe Saunders are if he's setting his punches up, how he controls the distance between him and his opponent, right? Everyone does it to some degree, right? But how they do that, whether they do that with feinting and probing, whether they do that with an active guard, right? Making it look like they're up to something, trying to be sneaky, or whether it's just by punching their opponent in the face, right? We'll also be looking at how they set their offense up, right? If you shoot a jab and you're the only reason you're shooting the jab, is to maintain distance, right? So that your opponent can't set up his punches. Then you're probably not setting that jab up, right? Because it's not a form of your offense. it has a different purpose, right? One interesting tactic, if you watch Erizani Lara, and you watch the Canelo fight, him and Canelo, Erizani Lara would throw a lot of right hooks, but he's not throwing that punch to land, right? Even though Canelo would still block it, he throws that punch to create space, right? So that he can get off the ropes, he can get out of the corner, and change his position in the ring so that he's not at a disadvantage. So he has some room to maneuver himself, right? And when you throw punches at your opponent just to create space, that's basically all you're doing, right? It's not. I mean, sure, you're scoring, right? You're definitely scoring, but you're not setting other punches up. You can in the future, right? But it's important to understand the tactics, why they're employing that tactic, right? That's also something that Daniel Jacobs did to Golovkin. That might be fresh in your mind. Just throw a punch, get them to react to it, so you can take a positional advantage or whatever. But anyway, we're gonna look at this fight. And those are the kinds of things we're going to be looking for, but also we're going to be looking for responsible defense. Does he defend himself after he throws punches, right? And also if he's less susceptible to counters, right? As we saw in the Lomachenko fight, Lomachenko versus Guillermo Rigondeaux, he was very active with his feints and his probes, and that made it almost impossible for a world-renowned counterpuncher like Rigondeaux, someone who before the Lomachenko fight, anyone in the world would have voted him the best counterpuncher in the world, maybe next to Mayweather, right? But the feints and the probes were able to take that away. So we're going to be looking to see if Billy Joe Saunders is going to be able to take his counters away, because I do think that that's how David Lemieux is going to win the fight. I think that Billy Joe Saunders is going to be backing up, but I don't think that David Lemieux is necessarily going to be leading, right? I think he will be taking kind of a back seat and allowing Billy Joe Saunders to punch at him to create the openings that David Lemieux needs. Although when David Lemieux gets him out of position, and this is all before I watched this film study, by the way, when David Lemieux gets him out of position, he'll basically go apeshit on him and throw huge punches, Yeah, so anyway, right away what we start out with is Billy Joe Saunders coming out, and he, using his lead hand, controlling his opponent's lead hand right there. And that's smart, using some probing. Usually left-handed fighters, usually when someone fights a fighter that's in a different stance than them, right? If a southpaw fights an orthodox or orthodox for a southpaw, both fighters have a very knowledgeable understanding of how important it is to have lead hand dominance, and to be the one controlling that space with your lead hand. But in the Eubanks fight, Billy Joe Saunders didn't really use it at all. So it is refreshing to see him doing it right here, and then right away throwing a punch off of it, right? Probe. And then he gets Gary O'Sullivan to start touching gloves with him, right? Kind of baiting him into it, and then shoots a jab to the face. I don't like how he defends himself after, right? He moves straight back, but if you notice, he's got that power jab still, right? Where he's putting all his weight into it, and he has to pull back, and it's a very slow escape from that transition. Some decent defense right there, slipping a shot, and that's set up by him controlling him right here. So touches gloves with him, and then he's able to control his face, and now his opponent knows that either Billy Joe Saunders is going to set up another shot, he's going to throw his own punch, or he's going to take a space back, he's going to move away, he's going to do something, because he's controlling this space, you know. He knows that he wants the control of this space for a reason, right? So Gary O'Sullivan throws a punch, and Billy Joe Saunders is also very aware that Gary Sullivan's going to throw a punch too, because he's looking to set it up with his lead hand, right? But so after that, he kind of comes up with his forearm. I like that part, right? But he's not really in position out of here. You know, if he's not pushing Gary O'Sullivan off right there, he might be getting hit with some punches, you know, coming up in the same spot. Doing that very same thing that Erickson Lubin did, right? Remember, we talk about that transitioning your weight. And this is what I was talking about, and I didn't show it in my film study, but this is something that I don't like that Billy Joe Saunders is doing. And I think that David Lemieux, he's fast enough and he hits hard enough that he's really going to be able to make Billy Joe Saunders pay for these positional missteps. You know, when he steps with his jab and he swings his hip into it, he's gonna probably eat a counter for that. You know, and even when he's defending himself right here, you know, and he winds up a little bit out of position, David Lemieux may be able to make him pay for that. You know, so just small things like that. You know, when you get down to it, boxing is all about positioning, you know, your speed and your power and all that good stuff. And, you know, you might have perfect technique, but none of that matters if you're always out of position. You know, if you don't know how to transfer your weight so that you're always mobile, or you don't know how to understand when you've been baited into a position, right? And that's like if someone shoots a jab at your face and you go to catch it, and then they feint a jab on the next one, you go to catch it and they throw a left hook, right? You got baited out of positioning, right? Or out of position, so now you're not in position to defend from the left hook because you just got hit, because you got baited to blocking a jab, right? And just getting baited into small things like that, that's still like a positional advantage for your opponent. They were able to get you out of position, and so far it looks like Billy Joe Saunders has just a few too many flaws, you know, to be fighting someone as dangerous as David Lemieux. You know, again, when he comes in right here, let's see his hips. Yeah, he's all on one leg. I like that he moves off the line a little bit, but he puts all his weight on his front leg when he's stepping with his jab, and you don't want to be stomping with your jab. You know, that's like one of the first things that, man, my coach used to drill me for that. Like, that was really hard too. It was really hard for me because I'm left-handed, right? But I fought in an orthodox stance, so my jab, my power hand, I had a lot of coordination, so I could really stick it in there, you know. But I did that same thing. I did a lot of stomping, and it stopped me from being able to get any power into my right leg, you know, until I learned how to kind of transition my weight and to also not keep all my weight on my front leg naturally, right? And that might also be what Billy Joe Saunders is doing too, you know. But when he steps, he puts all his weight on his front leg, and I think that's going to be something really bad for him. Again, you know, he's not really setting up his shot right here when he jabs to the body, so that's definitely not going to be an effective technique against David Lemieux. We saw how sharp his counters are. He's able to counter with the right hand, with the straight right, or the left hook. But I do like that he gets off the line. You know, I'm just not sure, again, when he steps. Look at how long it takes him to move off the line right here. I think that's just going to be a little bit too slow for David Lemieux. I just don't think that he has the technique, you know, to do it. Coming in again. And no setup, you know. Even this guy, Gary O'Sullivan, is able to touch him up, you know, with those counters, that counter right hand right there, or that counter left hand. And we saw how devastating David Lemieux's hook was. But another thing I wanted to talk about, I really appreciate the way that people were so nice about not agreeing with my pick for this. You know, they're like, oh, you know, I think you might be underestimating him. Oh, here's a film study where he beat a guy that I think is possibly similar to David Lemieux. You know, and I really appreciate that, and being able to go back and forth with you guys about it, rather than having somebody say like, oh, you know, you're racist, or you're a homosexual, or you voted for Trump, you know, like all these crazy things. They're all true, right? Of course they're all true, but that's not the point, right? Of course. But so if you guys have like interesting things like this, like you have videos to show, you're like, oh, what about this guy when he did that? You know, I'm more than happy to gonna go back and forth with you guys and talk about it and discuss boxing and just share what I think, what I know about boxing, and how it relates to this. And obviously, like, you know, Billy Joe Saunders being with a new trainer, which is another very interesting wrinkle, right? And that might make it so that some of at least what happened in the Monroe fight is interesting to do film study on, because of the fact that he might be ironing some of these kinks out, right? Because so far, you know, Billy Joe Saunders not setting his shots up, right? He's not feinting or probing, so it's really easy to read him. Not using defensive responsibility, like he does move off the line, but it's not like he's got great head movement when he's punching, right? He's not slipping when he punches. But we'll keep going. Yeah, it kind of looks like maybe his opponent is like a little bit, you know, not a counter puncher. But again, when he's shooting these jabs, look at how his weight is all on his front leg, you know, and he leans into the shot. I think that if he does that at all against David Lemieux, and I'll do a breakdown of that fight. I'm super excited to see that fight. I love watching David Lemieux. But I think that if he does that against David Lemieux at all, he's going to get caught with some big shots. Now, when we're talking about controlling the space between him and his opponent, right, he's moving back. He gives him a little feint right there. Oh, you know what? I'll bring up another video too. I didn't even make it as a video. Well, I'll show it. I actually, in my original film study, when I was going to do it, I was going to talk about the feints because Billy Joe Saunders has a mildly active guard, right? But David Lemieux reacts really well to feints, and I'll try to show you guys that. You might see a little bit of my desktop and all my gay porn and stuff, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about it at all. Now, this is interesting right here. This is going to be something he definitely needs to do right here. So he shoots this jab, right? And he's kind of shooting it at it doesn't look like he's necessarily trying to land it. He hits his opponent's right glove with it, right? And then look at how he controls him with his forearm after, right? To hold him back, right? Holding him back so he can't throw punches back. He can't counter. If he can do this more effectively against David Lemieux, he might actually have a lot of success in mitigating the counters, right? Because if you can control your opponent's head or their shoulders or their chest or whatever, you can stop them from rotating themselves and getting power into their shots. But again, because he's not setting his punches up, like right there when he comes forward, David Lemieux's going to have a really easy time countering him. Obviously, you're never going to see David Lemieux just, you know, taking shots like that. He almost never let that other guy throw punches at him. And I think that guy was probably a little quicker. So far, you know, not to be down on Billy Joe Saunders, but that guy actually looks like a better fighter than Billy Joe Saunders too. You know, better technique. You know, the one thing that he had going against him, though, was he didn't set his punches up either. You know, and that allowed David Lemieux to destroy him. You know, so I do think that Billy Joe Saunders could have success against, again, his opponent. Now, through all this, right, his opponent's not throwing any punches back. You know, there was a punch right there after Billy Joe Saunders throws a left hand, right? So maybe Gary O'Sullivan's just waiting to catch and counter that left hand, and that's why he's eating all the jabs. I'm not sure. But he's not really looking to make Billy Joe Saunders pay for using that jab. Oh, there's a shot right there. He gets away from that one pretty well. Not bad. But so far his way of controlling the distance is only with punching, right? A little bit pushing, you know, controlling, you know, not like pushing, but like a little bit of control and understanding when he's out of position against the ropes right here. Like right here, as you're skating this little part, you understand that you have to control your opponent because that's when they're going to do their most damage. And being able to push him off and control him. So that's smart. He understands when he's out of position. But the fact that he's only doing it with punches is very worrisome for me if I were to be a Billy Joe Saunders fan. And again, right, David Lemieux is not afraid of punching with with Billy Joe Saunders. He was trying to trade and punch with Golovkin, and Golovkin was just like, yeah, bro, come on at me. And we know Golovkin is a murderous puncher. Although, you know, that's a pretty good hook right there. I wouldn't want to take that. But so far, it doesn't look like Billy Joe Saunders is really setting his punches up. He's committing to a lot of the shots. Even when he's this close, look at how close he is right here to his opponent, and he still launches into step with his jab. That's very worrisome for me. I think that, you know, a technical flaw, and, you know, maybe he's better than this now, and he's worked on some of this stuff, but that is very worrisome for me, that he's always trying to get power in his jab, thinking that that's like a really important part of the... Now, that wasn't bad right there. Probing shot, and then he gets to... That's actually really nice. So, jab, right, probing, and then probing left hand, gets his opponent to lean in to take the power away from it and comes around with a hook. You know, these kind of tricks, right, if he was using them, because this is the first time he's done this in the whole round, right? If he's doing this more consistently, ooh. So his opponent trying to take advantage of the fact that he doesn't set his punches up, and he telegraphs everything. You know, Billy Joe Saunders has definitely an active work rate. You know, you can't take that away from him. But we've seen, you know, David Lemieux just throw punches and punches and punches. So I wonder how much... Oh, excuse me. How much success Billy Joe Saunders is going to have punching with David Lemieux. And so far, like, I don't think it's going to be a lot. Again, easy to get him out of position. Ducking, you know, not really pivoting, gets caught against the ropes. And there's no way that David Lemieux lets him off that easy if he ever gets him on the ropes. You know, I think Billy Joe Saunders has, what, maybe 20 fights? Yeah, I don't know how many he has, but I do think that, you know, to be honest, even though he's a world champion, I think he's just a little bit green, you know. David Lemieux's been fighting since he was a little kid. I mean, I was learning to box from David Lemieux. You know, he's got these training videos with his old coach. Anybody who's interested in learning boxing technique, you know, and you want to learn how to punch like a monster, watch those videos, man. I bet they're still on there. Boom. That's a huge shot, man. So let's see what happens here. So Billy Joe Saunders, punch, stays on the line, right? Those punches weren't set up. He doesn't use any defensive responsibility. His opponent's just walking forward, not even countering. Billy Joe Saunders does the right thing and controls him with his forearm right there to create space to come back with the left hand. But it's super telegraphed, as it takes just way too long for him to get there. Boom. But he does very well right here. But what he needs to do after this, after controlling him, right, is he needs to use that weight that his opponent is putting on his arm, that he's pushing into, and take an angle. You know, if he were to spin out towards his left and allow his opponent to fall in on his arm as he was pivoting, his opponent would fall completely off balance. He could catch him with the great left hand. But he winds up pushing off, boom, and then as he steps, because he's stepping and he's not turning and rotating his hips, right, he just gets caught because he's just a little bit offbeat, just a little bit too slow because of that. Now, I guess the one of the more interesting aspects of it, I don't know, has Billy Joe Saunders ever been knocked down? I don't know. Maybe he's just got a crazy iron chin and he can tire David Lemieux out and put a beating on him. You know, that is something that I think, you know, is a possibility. I would, to be honest, I would never pick anybody. Like going back to my Errol Spence versus Kell Brook pick, I didn't think that Errol Spence could take all the counters from Kell Brook. I knew Kell Brook was going to have a very successful early half of the fight, very successful because his style was basically tailor-made for Kell Brook. But he couldn't hurt him. You know, he couldn't hurt him enough to stop him or take any of his desire to come forward away. And eventually Errol Spence was able to just, you know, out-muscle him. Just break him down. You know, obviously hurting his eye socket a bit had a big, you know, impact on it. But I would never say that. It's very obvious to me that Billy Joe Saunders is not going to have the power to stop David Lemieux, in my opinion. And I would never pick anybody to be able to possibly go 12 rounds with David Lemieux. Maybe Canelo. I would pick Canelo to go 12 rounds with him. I don't think that Canelo. I wonder if Canelo could stop David Lemieux. I'm not sure. Canelo can hit pretty hard, but he has the kind of slapping tendency, where he hits with the inside of the glove. And I think that mitigates his power. It mitigates his strength. Not bad right there. Good active guard. Love that, right? So this is why when you come up in the same position, right, he ducks down, comes up, and then he's like, okay, this is where I'm out of position. I just got feinted. I just got baited. And he immediately ducks down too, right? And he knows the shot's coming. And then he pushes off of his opponent. Great control right here, you guys. And then is able to get away from the shots. This is exactly the kind of stuff he's going to have to do for 12 rounds against David Lemieux. The only problem is, if he's doing this kind of stuff, I'm not sure where his clever offense is going to come in at. That's the most worrying part, is because it doesn't look like he knows how to set his punches up enough to get David Lemieux out of position and worried about his own shots. Let me see. Is there anything on my desktop I don't want to show you guys? I don't know. I don't think so, actually, but let's see. Oh, case files. Oops. So this should open up. Here we go. David Lemieux reacting to the feints. Reacting really well right there. Understanding that he needs to get away from the counters from his opponent, right? So he feints him. He gets all the way down away from that, and then knows when he comes up he needs to move away, gets feinted again, and goes into attack mode. Understanding that that after he gets feinted, more punches might be coming, and then getting feinted again and understanding when something is not coming, right? So that may not be a successful avenue for Billy Joe Saunders. Again, dealing with the feints really well. Actually, I'm not sure what that video is. Him feinting his opponent? Okay. I don't know why I cut that video. Again, his opponent trying to feint him with the lead hand, right? Boom, feinting him, and he controls his lead hand and then immediately goes in for attacking, understanding that his opponent's not going to put himself out of position. What is this? Oh, this is Billy Joe Saunders' active guard, right? How he's kind of feinting all the time. Feinting. Again, you know, and I think David Lemieux. So Billy Joe Saunders, he's a fine fighter, you guys. I just think that there's some technical aspects that are like knowing what to do with your skills. Like once you know how to throw all these punches, once you know how to transition your weight, once you know how to do all that stuff, knowing what to do with all that information is a huge task in itself, right? Most people spend their whole lives going to the gym, training, learning how to throw punches, but there's not a school for them to go to learn what to do with that information. Now that you know how to throw a right hand, how do you land a right hand against your opponent, right? How do you get them to bring their hands down, or how do you get them out of position, right? And people don't spend enough time studying that stuff, and that's what film study is all about. It's all about the application of all those years of training to learn how to throw punches. And I think that while Billy Joe Saunders does a lot of things really well, he's kind of slick, you know, I think that he hasn't spent as much time thinking about the other half of the fight, right? Because you, like, think about it in this respect, right? You go to the gym, and all day, you know, you're there for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. You're working on yourself, right? You're working on only one half of the boxing, right? One half of a fight, right? You're only working on your own half. And the other half, right? He's sitting at the gym, right? Maybe it's your training partner and you're going to spar with them later. He's only working on his half. So now when you guys go into the gym, you've got these like real high-level fighters, like Errol Spence is a good example in this regard. You've got these really high-level guys, and you're just kind of mashing their skills together, right? And you, like Errol Spence and Kell Brook is just a great example. Even though I got my prediction wrong, it's a beautiful example because neither one of them are doing all that much to control the other guy. They're relying on their skills, on the things that they've trained, right? And that's why, like, those fights in particular, because neither one of them are using those kind of skills, are always so hard to really predict, right? Whereas Vasily Lomachenko versus Guillermo Rigondeaux was just, that was the easiest fight I've ever predicted. You know, I knew that there was no chance Guillermo Rigondeaux could win. You know, in my opinion, I didn't even want to give him a puncher's chance, but, you know, I also don't like being called a homosexual all the time, or a racist or whatever. So, but anyway, because of the fact that Lomachenko does think about his opponent in that regard, he does know his opponent is the other half to that equation, right? That he's going to be reacting to the things that he's doing. He understands that he can make his opponents react to those things in ways that are favorable to him, right? And that's something that I don't think Billy Joe Saunders is doing particularly well. He doesn't understand how to manipulate his opponents into doing what he wants, because all of the most advanced levels of boxing are control techniques, right? Making your opponent do something, right? Or making your opponent not do something. And eventually it gets to a point where if you're really good at it, you're basically just saying, hey, bring your gloves up really high, and then your opponent's like, okay, and they do that. But the way that you do that is by punching at them. You punch them at their forehead, and then they bring their gloves up to cover their head, and then after you feint that punch to the forehead, you throw a right hand to their body, right? And what you're doing is you're controlling them. You're telling them what to do with your hands, with your feet, with your feints, with your probes, right? With your head movement, you know. And I don't think that Billy Joe Saunders has figured out that other side of the equation. He doesn't know how to use the feints and the probes to get David Lemieux out of position enough to land his counters. I hope that wasn't... That's kind of how I've been wanting to say it for a long time. I just don't know if people understand, like, they're going to follow it. You know, I do want to make a video or like a video series. Man, I just have too many videos in my mind right now. To be honest, it gets kind of overwhelming, and it makes me not make any videos because I get really stressed out easily with stupid stuff. But anyway, yeah, so I know you guys are like big Billy Joe Saunders fans, man, but I'm just not sure he can do this one, you guys. He's going to have to show a lot of skills, and this is very possible. He's going to have to show a lot of skills that he hasn't shown in this fight, that he didn't show in the Gary O'Sullivan fight. Because if he comes out fighting like that, without setting up his punches, without controlling his opponent after he throws punches, or using, you know, responsible defense, and even responsible defense is going to be really tough because of the way that David Lemieux is able to time those punches, right? And that's a problem when you don't set your punches up. David Lemieux has really good timing as well. I think he's going to get hurt, you know. Even if Billy Joe Saunders can be crafty and control the space without punching, him finding a way to score punches against David Lemieux without putting himself far enough out of position, it just seems like a tall order. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Thanks, guys.